Okay, we will start the meeting at 5:04. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Turpinning,
Here.
McCanny, Wendell,
Here.
Cullis,
Here.
Murphy,
Here.
Hutton,
Here.
Grosvenor,
Here.
Okay, it's my understanding Mr. Grosvenor's name is the S is silent. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Okay. Mr. McCanny is running late, so we'll make note of the time he does get here. Next is the approval of the agenda. Before we do that, I'd like to make one change. I'd like to move the presentation down after old business. I've already confirmed with Mr. Campbell that that's okay. And then I would make a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Cullis and Wendell? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The approval of the minutes from January 9th. Are there any additions or deletions? None appearing. Motion, Chair would entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Turpinning. Support was who?
Murphy,
Murphy? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Statement of purpose. The mission of Holly Historic District Commission is to safeguard the heritage of the village of Holly by preserving the historic district in the village that reflects the elements of the village's history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, or culture. The goal of the commission's work is to stabilize and improve property values in the historic districts and the surrounding areas, foster civic beauty, strengthen the local economy, and to promote the use of historic districts for the education, pleasure, and welfare of the citizens of Holly. Next, we'll go on to public comment. I don't believe we have anybody for public comment. Then we will move on to old business. The first part of that would be the status of the HDC guidelines. You'll find that those are in your packet, along with the email that came from Haley Schreiber from the Michigan State Historic Preservation on the book that we had been working on. Basically, she thought it was nice. She thought that there could be some difference in the way we did the headings to make things clearer. If you read on to her email, she has some other changes in the way that we marked things. There's really nothing about the content that she's changing, just the way we label it and display it. Then there were a couple of things that she felt could be moved in different areas. I spoke with Mr. McCanny. He's been working on that. He has all of the headings changed. He has all of the punctuation issues that she had shown. As he gets down into some of the moving stuff around, that's a little more involved. But I think we should have that ready to go back to her and then ready to come to this board in our March meeting for approval,
okay?
at which point we would send it on to the council. When he gets here, I'll ask him if there's anything he wants to add to this. So I would make a motion to table this until Mr. McCanny gets here. Is there support?
Second.
Second by Murphy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We'll come back to that. The second item on the list is the status of buildings downtown. I will turn to Mr. Nitschke and Mr. Price. By the way, welcome, Mr. Price, our new village manager, to your first HDC meeting.
Well, thank you. Well, I will say that, Kurt and I and Chief Watson, we went down the other day based on some of the conversations that George and I had, and we were looking over some of the previous issues that were brought up. And we're really we're looking at what the way forward will be, specifically on some of the windows and such, because it's not just within that area. We really want to do an inventory of all of the buildings, because it's not isolated just to the incidents that were reported. And really because it's so large, such a large area that is been replaced for windows, and that we want to see what really the appetite is of the community and the council in order to, really enforce the codes on that specific issue that we were talking about. I don't know, Kurt, if you want to add anything to that.
I also know we were discussing, talking to the village attorney and seeing where we need to go as the,
Yeah, because apparently there was an opinion that was brought forward before about that. I talked to the village attorney, and he did not have that available, or he didn't, so I have asked him to kind of readdress what is our actual authority to enforce some of these codes, because there were some questions about that previously that weren't answered.
Okay, as you look at that, I'd like to remind you that there are some buildings that would be grandfathered in. In other words, the alterations to those buildings were done before the historic district was begun.
Yes.
At the same time, Mr. Campbell's here, and Ron can tell you, even though the work's been done, and maybe it's been dragged on for 3 years since we've gone after them, it was done without a permit, and those can be made. I didn't know, Mr. Campbell, if you'd like to share that opinion with you. We're talking about the buildings downtown that put in new windows and changed the shapes and so forth.
We'll talk a little bit about that in the presentation.
Oh, it'll be in the presentation? Okay.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we discussed, and we went kind of window by window throughout the downtown, and we're talking about wanting to, for me, I just need to learn a lot more of the history of, like you said, what years were some of these done. Some of them look historically great, but it was obviously, been replaced. Some of them were obviously done more recently and not.
If you have some questions, I'd be, at some point, if you'd want to do that, walk around with me.
Absolutely.
I would-
I've got some pictures too that we took and that we can.
Okay. Yep, no, I would appreciate them too. I know the two buildings in question are the most recent one, which is the building east of Ziggy's. That was just done this summer in the fall. And then the other one that's been around here, but it's been getting kicked around, is the green building on the southeast corner of Saginaw and Bell Alley.
And I believe too, there was still some questions on over the back sides of buildings and front sides, street sides, parking lots and things like that. There was still some clarification that we were discussing with that as well.
Is that going to be covered tonight as well? Mr. Campbell will be able to clarify that. He's been our teacher. He's the one certified in this, works with Oakland County Planning. And usually a lot of the information I give to you is regurgitated from what this man has taught me while I've been sitting here. One of the conversations is, when is the back of the building in play? The backs that are open to the public and the sidewalk and the parking lots, as opposed to an area where they're just back to back, which we don't actually have much of in Holly, just because of the way it's done. So that can be addressed then. All right, then if that's all we have for that, we can then take on, I'm glad I switched those around, because now we know what's going to be coming up in the presentation after I knew what you guys had to say. So, Mr. Campbell from Oakland County Planning, you
Yes, absolutely.
oh, you've not had an opportunity to meet Mr. Campbell?
Just via email and through Tim Kolbeck is,
Oh, okay. I knew he was here a couple times last week downtown. I saw him and I thought perhaps you were part of that meeting they had.
And I have not had a chance to formally meet him either, other than a passing meeting. I'm looking forward to talking to you, sir.
Well, I was going to say, He did a presentation at our last meeting, but you weren't here. That's right. Yeah, Tim skipped school. Kurt skipped school.
Chris skipped, Kurt was here.
Well, then how did you not meet him if he was here?
I just said I might have been passing, I didn't have a chance to really talk.
Oh, gotcha. I'm sorry. I thought you hadn't met him. 'Cause I was gonna say, wait a minute. All right. So it was Chris that skipped school. Yeah. Okay.
And I just briefly met her, all new faces.
So I don't know if other board members, I'm gonna move over to the seats there because it's right behind me. And I can see it better from there.
Well, thanks for having me back after the signature. We're gonna get in a little bit more of the weeds tonight than what we did the first time. But what I hope to do is to have some questions answered by all of you as a team, huh? Let me see if I'm going the right way here. So we got a little pressure. Oh, why is this not?
Is it not working again?
Refreshing, there we go. Okay, so what gives you the right to tell me what I can do with my property, even though I'm in a historic district? Is it one, National Preservation Act of 1966, the U.S. Supreme Court, the Michigan Public Act of 169, 1970, or the Holland Village Council?
Oh,
You got it.
Yeah, that was my guess too.
Oh, that's right. Every one of those has a.
You tricker, Ron.
Which it is, I did, but you were good, you got them all. Each of them just kind of built on the previous one. And, but it was the village council that appointed the commission. First of all, they accepted the Historic District Study Committee report outlining the area that they believed to be historic, and it was accepted. And then the point was, we have to appoint a commission. You don't do the study, you do the observation and review, so. Okay, next question, I just have a couple of these. National Preservation Act of 1966 stated that it was in the public interest to have historic districts. In what ways has it been beneficial? One, increase the property values in historic districts. Two, Michigan tax credits and grants available to property owners. Home repair discounts on building supplies. Or four, return of $11 on every dollar of state tax credit.
All the above.
also all of them.
Wrong.
Oh, wait.
Three is not.
Yes, three, I'm sorry, they don't,
Oh.
as of yet, as of yet. Yeah, every one of those, we saw the increased property values, we gave the survey that the Michigan Historic Preservation Network did in the 4 communities. And every time, over those 4 communities with identical neighborhoods, same school district, identical housing, age and things, the historic districts average 6 to 35% higher than the non-district, so.
Wow.
So it has made significant difference. Okay, last one. What makes something historic? Is it something that the Historic Commission declares as historic? Is it property the owner declares historic? It's when the state and federal government declares it historic, or when a building becomes at least 50 years old?
Four.
State and federal, but also local government?
You're gravitating to 3, right?
Yes.
Does the property owner have to request, in some instances, the property owner can request a historic designation?
No.
No?
No.
Number 4?
Well, no, that doesn't make it historic. It's one of the criteria that gives you an overview. It is 3, and now you're kind of right, because it is the local historic study committee that the village council appointed. They
Excuse me for 1 second. Do we have a microphone he can use?
The microphone, it's not working.
It's not?
No.
I will try to talk louder if that helps.
One or two?
Yeah, I was gonna move one of these, but the cords aren't,
They're not long enough.
Well, my patch cables are at home.
See if that helps.
yeah, if you can move up, we could probably reach, one of the one, George's over there to you.
And you said it wouldn't work. There we go. Does that help at all?
I just had somebody shot me something and I was writing stuff down on my phone and it showed up, so.
Okay, let's see if I can get this down. Okay, so tonight, you did pretty good on that, actually. Whoop, I wanna go back. How do I go back? Okay, fundamentals part 2. We're taking a little deeper look. We're gonna look at the National Preservation Act of '66. What makes something historic? We're gonna do some terminology that you'll be familiar with, hopefully, shortly. We'll talk about the Secretary of Interior standards and then your roles and responsibilities. So stop me at any time, okay? I like to keep it informal and make sure that it's coming across correctly. Okay, we talked about this before. This was President Johnson signing the National Preservation Act of 1966. This officially created the National Register Districts through the Park Service. It's the Department of Interior that were assigned the role of keeping the register. And then that's where all your nominations go through, is the U.S. Park Service. And also the tax credits. Now, this also combines with the IRS, but historic tax credits will first go through the National Park Service for their approval, and then on to the IRS. Anyway, so there are, let's see, there are 19,500 cities and townships and villages in the United States. You say, who cares, right? Who cares? But more than 23 of them have HDCs. So that's what? That's not even
Quarter of a percent or something.
yeah, I mean, so you are a unique group, you know? They're not just willy-nilly appointing historic district commissions or creating historic districts. The National Park Service, they look at it very closely and they monitor it, because once you have it on the National Register, that opens up to historic tax credits of 20% if you follow the Secretary of Interior standards. Now, what if I have a building that's on the National Register and I want to tear it down? Can I do it? Yeah, I can. Yeah. Nothing preventing me. Think of it as the National Register as being more identifier, but the HDC as being the protector. Does that make sense? We'll get into that a little bit more.
Ron, hang on.
Yep.
Check the volume on that. I just got a text.
That's what I did too. I don't know what's.
How is this?
Okay, yeah, I got it. Is that number 6? That's number 6.
I'm number 6.
Testing one more time.
Testing? Better?
Be right into it, I guess.
Gotta be right into it. Okay, I won't be able to read anything now.
The good news is we have people watching.
That's a sign. Hey. thank
Oh,
you to those
okay.
out there watching.
So what did the Act of 66 do? Again, I know there's some review. First of all, it declared that national preservation, historic preservation, was in the public interest. And we saw that with increase in property values, right? It set the federal policy for preserving national heritage. Now, I said you could tear down a National Register structure. I can if I use my own money. But if I'm borrowing money with a bank or getting a federal loan, no, they're not going to buy it. They're going to say no. So if I take the historic tax credits, I want to clear the building out to build a new one, they're going to say, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I don't mean to have my back to you.
You're fine, Ron. Thank you. Ron.
Okay. So we saw that. It also not only established the National Register of Historic Places, but it also created what we call the SHPO, SH, that's the State Historic Preservation Office, and that's who you've been communicating with. They're in every state. And then it mandated that there be qualified people in that department or that organization. So every state that you go to will have a State Historic Preservation Office. Now, and what the landmark case was the protection of this building, New York City. New York, they went through in the early 60s, they tore down Penn Central Station. And it just upset New Yorkers. And so they created what they called the Landmark Commission, which is forerunner to what you have right here, Historic District. And they selected certain buildings. And this kind of goes back to your question is, does the owner have to have a right to turn down or not accept the National Register? Well, this one wasn't accepted by the owner. They were all set to tear it down, and the Landmark Commission said, no, you can't do it. We've made that a protected structure in New York City. So they went to the courts. And the courts said, no, New York has passed this legislation, they can do it. They went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they said, well, they're taking our right away from this land. And they said, no, they're protecting it. It's just like a site plan review or a zoning ordinance, okay? You know, if you're gonna build in this town, you have to have so many parking spaces. If you you can only cover so much lot, you can only build so high. And they're looking at historic preservation in the same way. It's just another overlay of the zoning ordinance that gives special designation to these districts, and that's what your charge is to protect that. Questions?
Actually,
No.
I do have one.
Oh, okay.
So we've seen this a million times in Detroit. What if that person can't afford to keep it up?
Well, that's a good question. Yes. Demolition by neglect is what they often call it. A lot of times it's planned demolition by neglect where they say, I'm not going to do anything with it then. And it gets to a state of repair where it's too costly. But you can work with property owners and such as with the depot here that you've been working on, there was $150,000 that was donated by Preserve America. Another, what, $350,000, $60,000 that came from the county, all for preservation. I think you would qualify for more grants too. So hopefully there'll be grants and things like that that'll come out of the designation. Okay. But yeah, that's always a tough question. Okay. Then the state, they passed that act in what, 77, that said, yes, local jurisdictions have the right to create historic districts if they so choose. Holly chose. And once they created that, that allowed each municipality in the state to have a historic district commission. So everything's been followed here. That's why you're sitting here tonight. Okay, now if we're looking at National Register criteria, let me get one more in there. Generally, and this is what kind of tricked you, George, was that 50 years or older. That's kind of a general point of saying something would be eligible for. It doesn't make it historic, but it says it would be eligible. Now, have they violated that? Sure they did. When? Well, when they passed when they nominated the launch site of Apollo 11 went to the moon. And they said, yeah, we know it's not 50 years old, but we don't want anything to happen to that site. And so we're going to make an exception to this. But generally speaking, it's going to be a 50-year break off. The other thing that makes something historic is it's associated with events, activities, or developments important to the history of the native peoples, the nation, or region. Now, the region could be Holly. You're downtown. Well, maybe it wasn't anything that happened nationally, but it certainly reflected the growth of Holly itself. Okay. We could take a look at schools like that. You know, there could be a number of schools here, and that would demonstrate the education of the area. Okay, so it could also be associated with the lives of people important to the events and activities. And I'm going to use a depot again, just because it's fresh in my mind. Who shows up at Holly Depot? Carrie Nation, right? National figure. She does her work in Holly, but it created history here. Who comes in? The governor. She spends a night in jail. The governor comes in, gets her out, and she goes on her way. But that helped us get the grant for the Preserve America because of that connection to national heritage. So that was important enough to really make a development. It could be a significant achievements in architecture, engineering, landscape. Again, I'm going to use a depot because that depot was totally unique. I've been to every depot in the state documenting them, and I've never seen one like this one. And I won't go into all that tonight, but it was very unique in its engineering, and that's what we need to preserve. It happens, not a lot, but potential for archaeological finds in understanding it. Believe it or not, we were digging in Rochester, and lo and behold, they found the old water main that had the public drinking fountain, and they uncovered it, and they said, wow, this is below the sidewalk, and they put a little plaque there. They kept it so you could look down into the hole and see the drinking fountain, the well that was there. So sometimes you run into those. Could be mastodon bones, whatever, but they will run into them.
Sir, I have
Yep.
a question.
Sure.
I had heard that Pontiac was going to try and bring their river back.
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge. Yeah.
Is that what they're thinking?
Well, they were, but I think they've done studies and it's proved just too expensive to bring it back now. So, what we did recommend though through the parking lot, because it cuts through that large service lot, just in front of,
Phoenix Plaza there.
yeah. And just to, I don't want to say paint it, but somehow mark the pavement as to where that river originally run to kind of recognize that. That wouldn't be considered historic preservation though. So. Okay, these are 4 terms that you'll have to become familiar with: preservation, restoration, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. And you think, well, okay, how are they different? So I'm going to try to demonstrate. Preservation, and this is key, is keeping everything in place. Not saying it's all historic, but rather than replacing it, you repair it. So this whole column was right at the bottom. You can say, well, the whole thing should be taken out. It could be, but what the National Park Service would rather see is you repair it. Keep that column as much as you can and just repair the portion that needs to be repaired. So that's preservation. It's keeping everything in place, whether it's historic or not. Just the way the building is today. That's preservation. Okay. This is restoration. I'll go back to that one. This was the Durant Dort office building. Say, well, how important is that? This is in Flint. Durant Dort office building was where General Motors began. Billy Durant and Charles Dort founded General Motors here in this building because they were running a carriage factory. Now, it didn't look like that when they founded General Motors. This is what it looked like, and this is what it was restored to. They took off the 3rd floor, they put the dormers back up, the gable roof, and restored the windows and everything. So it went from what you see in the upper right-hand corner to what you see here. That's restoration. That's taking a building back to a particular time in history. What was that point in history that was so significant? The date that General Motors was founded here. It's a national landmark structure, which is the highest status you can get. Okay. So that's restoration. This is rehabilitation. The building in the lower left-hand corner, that was a pickle factory. It's now city offices. Up in Pellston, not Pellston, Mount Pleasant.
It's an old creamery.
Creamery, yeah.
I grew up
Oh, did you? Okay.
4 blocks from there. Remember when they did that? It's across from a 120-year-old grain elevator that burned.
Okay. Yep, that is Mount Pleasant, right? Yeah. The one on the right is in Rochester, that's Van Heusen Farm.
Van Heusen.
Now, this was the cattle barn, it's now a museum. So rehabilitation is taking a building, not making it back to what it was, but using it for a new use. We will be doing that with a depot. It's not gonna be a depot, passengers coming through or anything like that, but it's gonna find a new use. Now, oftentimes you'll find all three of these, or all four of these actually, some form or fashion with every project. Some parts you're gonna be preserving, other parts you're gonna be rehabilitating, other parts you're gonna be restoring, if that makes sense. The last one, come on. Oh, no, don't tell me.
That's a pretty historic building.
Don't tell me.
While you're looking for that question for the board, in that last picture from the Butler Farm, you saw the inside of that building was what's known as fire brick. Does anybody know where we have fire brick in Holly?
Would it be between the buildings?
Huh?
Between the individual buildings? No?
No, it's on the back of the antique store next to the township hall. There's fire brick on that one wall back there.
Why is that
And I
thing
can
long
tell you,
away?
the story of the fire brick on the farm in Rochester was because their first barn burned down, and the manufacturer of fire brick was in the Rochester area, and when they rebuilt it, they used the fire brick so that they wouldn't have to worry about the barn burning.
What
When
is
it was
happening
susceptible
here?
to burn.
Interesting.
But we have some of that fire brick right here now.
And the bricks is to withstand higher temperatures, correct?
Yep, that, with that glazing that's on the outside. Just some fun facts, sorry.
I'm losing it again. What's the deal?
You've never noticed we fall down when we drive by, we go,
The boy's gonna make me sign.
Well, I'm
in all
curious
over again.
about, we heard in a council meeting, or was, I don't know if it was the council meeting or the depot dedication, that that the first diamond for the tracks, where 2 rails, 2 lanes, is down there in Holly, and I'm like, well, if they go to reroute everything, I hope they don't take it out. If they do, I hope we could save it somehow.
oh, you're talking about the first diamond in Michigan?
Yeah, 'cause
Boy, I'm having a real problem with this.
Yeah,
Says
I
my
don't think
session
their intention
crashed
is to
'cause it-
straighten up. I think their intention is
Can you get to it? Just hit okay.
further back.
I don't, I know they were
Get any
saying something about
cursor
it, I'm
here.
like, well, I wonder if that ends up going out, what's gonna happen then?
No, they're wanting to take the curve out of the curve.
What you talking about, Joe?
They're trying to straighten it out a little bit.
They wanted to bring it so it
They'll
goes,
cut the radius of the curve.
I think so they can go a little, so the trains on the
know if
state
we're
thing
gonna be
can go
able to-
faster or something.
Well, the CSX track, you have to go really, really slow.
We can try that, but. Of course, it's not getting any signal because I don't have anything on.
It says device connected.
Oh, now I'll see.
Now, George, where can I get the boundaries that we have set up for our historical district? Because I haven't got that packet yet.
That would, the village has that information.
Wow.
Daniel, were you asking about the, packet you requested, that is the same? Okay, so, Lisa wasn't able to find the packets that Debbie would hand out, so my question is, Ms. Hutton, do you happen to have the packet they handed out to you when you were sworn in with you today, or,
I don't believe they gave me a packet.
oh, okay.
What's the issue right now?
I thought when she swore,
For some reason, it's not coming up on the,
Why don't you email it to me and I'll pull it up on my port over here, if you can.
oh, boy,
We were gonna put it on a hard drive.
wonderful.
What's that?
We were gonna put it on a USB
I,
stick.
I can't even get my, I can't get to it, no.
George is gonna get.
Unless you're a computer whiz, I don't know.
Okay, the one with the,
I'll try that,
I'd like to call it him, or what the.
I don't wanna change,
I didn't receive
Are you,
a
so
packet
you're
either.
not, what's wrong? You're just, you can't.
I can't even get the screen now.
Restart it again without this plugged in.
Okay,
And we'll plug that in.
sorry for this.
All right.
So then, George, I got a question for you, George, just,
Well, pleasure to meet you.
George.
Oh, geez, I won't even,
How Antiques Arcade burnt down, and I know it got bought, if he builds something there, he's gotta build it to resemble.
So it still has to come back to the HDC. The building will have to maintain the look of the alley. So it'll still have to have that type of facade and taller windows. It'll have to fit in. It will obviously be a new building, but it will still have to fit. They can't come in with some modern design.
Well, that's what I figured, yeah, that's what I was meaning, they just
They
couldn't,
still have to go through design concept for the exterior.
the interior can be all,
That's them.
as long as the exterior, anything visible to the eye.
Yep.
Yep.
It'll still have to fit into the street.
you know, we have a little presentation on that too.
Pardon?
We have a presentation on that too. Okay.
Did it come back up?
No, it's shutting down now. I think I kept it on the card too long.
This is the laptop.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but I'm assigned to it.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Yeah, easy for you to say. Well, maybe while we're getting that,
So then Farmington Hills has an historical district too, right?
Farmington does, I don't think Farmington
Maybe
Hills
it's
does.
Farmington, Grand River and like,
Yep.
Powers Road.
Yep,
Yeah, 'cause when I used to cut grass, we had a house we had to cut, we had to make sure it was the exact height it had to be, and we could not, if we nicked a flower, we had to call somebody, so, cause they gotta make sure that. Oh, it was,
there, we finally got it shut down.
All right. It's plugged in with all this power.
Yeah, that's it, and I don't know if I really need that or not. Battery was charged, I haven't used it much today, but
All right, now try to log in.
it should come up.
they also said, was it that the depot has to face the same way it's facing now?
I'm sorry, the what?
Depot has to face the exact same way?
So the depot has to face the other set of tracks because part of the historic destination
I'm gonna go, sure.
So we had to slide it around,
Oh,
and it had to face those other set of tracks. Originally, we were gonna have it facing more of the moose,
Right.
and we had to back it up, because that was the historic
if you can
designation.
save it on here.
I heard something about it, but I wasn't sure exactly 100% of what it was.
Come on, come on.
I'll comment here on the screen real quick.
You should be able to just transmit it right there.
Nice.
Must be this drive right there. I don't recognize that.
Yeah, that's it.
Watch, you hijack the screen, then he gets it.
Well, we're transferring it.
We're getting cyber attacked over here.
Right.
Save it here.
Should, yeah. Let's see if we got that on there or not.
Okay. That's all right.
Go, well, you have touchscreen, right? There. Okay.
Let me see.
Yeah, I don't know which one.
Come on, come on.
This piece, oh yeah, there.
Yep, it's there.
Okay,
Good.
cool.
I'm gonna turn that. Okay. I'll take that down.
Can you go plug from up there too? Just in case?
Couldn't try and get one.
We're not gonna be able to make it work.
No, we just transferred it over to,
Okay.
Mr.
I'm gonna
Prince.
close the formal part of the meeting. You can continue your training,
okay,
because I have to go to my next meeting.
yep, that's fine. You want your microphone?
Just for a moment. So. Back to your seat. Come on, come on. I got like 10 minutes. I know. That's why I'm trying to do this. So, we have another meeting we need to be to, but Mr. Campbell can continue the training, especially for the new board. But I'm gonna close the formal part of the meeting, because Mr. McCann is the co-chair, and there are no more decisions that need to be made, it's just the training. So I would move to, oh, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna formally close the meeting, but the training will continue, and it'll stay out in the video. But we've completed all the business. Are there any commissioner staff comments at this time? I see heads shaking, no?
None here.
Okay, then, I want to make one motion to excuse Mr. McCanny from tonight's meeting. Is there support?
I support it.
Support.
I think I got Turpinning first.
Yes, I beat you.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? I know he's still in traffic, working his way this way. At that point, I will adjourn the formal part of this meeting at 5:48 PM. The video will continue while the training continues. Mr. Campbell, I thank you, and I will be heading to the next meeting.
Good luck at your next meeting. You out too, Josh?
Yeah.
Good luck.
I'll be there too.
I'm just saying, good luck, 'cause good luck for any meeting.
No, it'll be.
You had it working at council, come on now.
No, well, I started over here, and then that's the, technically
Well, everyone remembers the last picture that was up there, right?
Yeah, the pickle factory thingy.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, the creamery, I'm sorry.
Creamery, I called it the pickle factory. It's a creamery,
It was Borden's?
Borden's Creamery.
yeah.
Missy the cow.
That was a
Missy or
beautiful-
it Elsie, Elsie.
That was a beautiful rehabilitation too.
You should have seen.
Oh, I saw it before, it was, yeah, it was,
I may or may not have been in that as a teenager, wandering around once or twice in my youth.
We didn't hear that.
Remodeled. With the fellow neighborhood kids.
Sorry, I'm having to troubleshoot real time here.
Guess the village hasn't got to the smartphone technology where you just snap it on the screen.
what you have is something I made up myself. And it was to help another historic commission, just kind of intake the process, and I'm not suggesting you go to that. So what I always like to do is have current photos of, let's say there's a building downtown facade. Let's see what it looks like. Any historic photos that you might have, that is always helpful. The second page gives you, well, what's being proposed? What are you planning to do here? And then at the very bottom of that second page, you'll see where there's a place for illustration. Now, not all illustrations factored in there, they could attach some. But the page I really wanted to hit is the third and last page. And this is taking the Secretary of Interior standards, kind of the brief, and I think you saw that last time. You recognize these? And these are numbered 1 through 10. And I put a little check box so that if you're reviewing this, it gives you, okay, does this property meet condition number 1? If it does, fine, check it, go on to the next one. If it doesn't, probably record why you don't think it does. And this was a way to get everyone to go each of these 10 and go through, and if you turn something down as commission, you gotta tell them why. Why did you tear it down, or turn down my request? Why aren't you giving me the permission to go ahead and get a building permit? That's why it's very important. So we go through each of those. Probably the one that is difficult is number 8, and this is the archaeological. You know, oftentimes in a city, this has been built over so many times, you really don't know what's under the street, what's under the sidewalk. Just like in Rochester, where they were putting a new streetscape and they dug down and presto, there's the old well, city well. So there's all things like that that could be encountered, but it shouldn't be anything to hold up a building permit unless you know for a fact that there's something buried there, mastodon bones or whatever. You know. But I find that a very helpful way to just make sure that everything is checked. Have you gone through, and it could be done as an individual, and when you come together, presto, you kind of have a talking point that you can go from.
Very nice. Streamlined too.
I do like that.
So what we were going to do, we were going to go through what the Secretary of Interior standards say. They're the guidelines that you should go by. The point I wanted to make here is when you make a decision, you kind of have to take the position of what would the National Park Service do? How would they view it? And this has happened not just once, but several times. When there's tax credits involved, property owner will come in, ask for approval by the HDC. They may get it, and then they go to the Park Service and they say, no, this doesn't meet the Secretary of Interior. Say, well, I got it approved by the local historic district. It doesn't matter, you don't get the historic tax credits unless you make these changes. So it's important to try to follow those standards as much as possible. You never know. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I've seen it go the other way, where the local HDC has turned it down, the Park Service, no, that meets the historic district standards or guidelines, and they will approve it. Well, I gotta go back to the commission to say, okay, they've approved it, can you, so I can get my building permit? So that's what you wanna get caught on. The other thing is now the state has historic tax credits, and for the first time, they give it for residential property. And when a property owner comes in, I think it's a 25% state historic tax credit for justified expenditures. Justified meaning that it meets the Secretary of Interior standards. And I know the first time it went around, there was a lot of confusion because they would meet federal but not local, and vice versa. So it's important to tie those two together. And what I want to stress is, you know, kind of know what those standards are, know what the history of the building is, know what it virtually looked like as early as you can tell. What is the period of significance, just like with the Durant Doored office building? Are they taking it back to that, or is it rehabilitation? Everything you review, for the most part, would be probably rehabilitation. It's a little lighter on the description and the things that you would allow. We talked earlier, I think the question came up about, well, what if you don't see it from the street? And that's something, every site is important to the National Register, but some sites are more important than others. One that's on the back of the house or the property, who sees it? Well, nobody. So you could probably go a little lighter on that and make more leniency towards it, but it's really your decision. You want to do that. I'm trying to think of a case in point. Where did we have that? Was that here, George? We had that? Oh, it was maybe on your garage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was, you take in consideration, you know, when that garage was built, it
You
was
said garage, it was actually the
carriage house, yes, now a garage. But when it was built, it was, yeah. When it was built, it was what, in the
1860.
1860? That property has changed. It's gotten narrower. You know, parts were sold off. There's new requirements placed on it with zoning restrictions and things. All that went together to come up with, you modified the plan as best you could to preserve the carriage house, but still meet the present-day requirements. And that's what you have to take this all into consideration under rehabilitation.
At the time when we made the presentation to the HDC and for unit members, I stepped down from the chair, I came out in the audience, Mr. McCann had the meeting, and Ron Campbell was here to help make our presentation. You coined the phrase adaptive purpose in moving. What happened was the building had its door on the lower level facing north.
And you could no longer access it from
And
that.
you no longer could come down and make the turn to get into the building because there wasn't enough room left. So we took that same door, moved it over to the west wall, cut out the hill, and now you could, and we raised the building 3 feet. When we put the new foundation in, now you could put modern vehicles in there because the old one, I can barely get in with my hat on. So we raised it 3 feet, moved the door around here. That helped to justify the $40,000 expense in raising the building, putting the new piece in and putting it back down, but ultimately preserved the 2-story building on top.
And that's all contextual relationship. I heard you talking earlier about the depot, how it had to be parallel with the south track. That was a requirement of the National Park Service in order to keep its designation. And why did they make that? Because it was all part of the contextual history. It served that track. The other one was curved. How do you position that depot to reflect that? It was a union depot, meaning that 2 or more railroads came in there. So they said, well, let's pick the straight track, we'll put it parallel with that. It's still between the 2 tracks. It still has the identity of serving 2 tracks. Turning it any other way, then it left the 2 station masters' window without any tracks to serve. And they said, well, that,
Sidewalk.
yeah, it serves the sidewalk or the
Or the
back of
grass.
but it never served, so it was a matter of contextual interpretation. So those are all things that we'll look at.
And only because you're talking about, the reason it had to be moved was it was so close to the 2 sets of tracks that in today's standards, you no longer could use the building and be safe. If you were talking to something, you took a step backwards, you could get hit by a train because it was so close to the.
Yeah.
Be the next one on the baggage car.
Yeah. So maybe what we could do, saving time, let me come back, we'll kind of pick this up and we'll get into the roles and responsibilities and,
Wonderful.
is that fair?
Sure.
Cool.
So,
Appreciate your time.
oh yeah, no, this is
Very
fun.
much,
You're,
thank you.
you're a good group to work with.
Absolutely.
I do like this handout you gave us, Ron. I mean, I hope that we all can vote on to say, yeah, let's use this, even if we look at existing buildings downtown and be like, well, that doesn't mean no more, that doesn't mean no more.
Yep. And it gives you a